tonight, the balls are in my court, and I just might rip them off and step on them.
The ninth wonder of the world, Chyna!
I'm probably one of the most recognizable female athletes in the world right now.
So she was at the pinnacle of her career. And unfortunately, when you're at the pinnacle, there's really no place to go but down.
Her fans say she's a great performer. Her critics say she looks like a pump-up.
Outside the ring, the triumphs of Chyna were quickly eclipsed by a lasting darkness.
The downward spiral was so dramatic that that's what people remember.
From drugs to assault to...
I wish she had not agreed to have her journey documented.
She's going to face her demons. She's going to be put in some very uncomfortable situations.
I'm Chyna. I'm a champion.
An absolute train wreck.
Does he have any idea where she was at that point in her life when she had to make that decision?
It's easy to take her story at face value, to judge her like a stranger. But behind her dark descent is a history of emotion, of personality, of humanity.
All my life, I've wanted to be a smart, powerful, strong woman. And I wanted to be an inspiration to others. And then I experienced hardships that I never could have ever imagined in my life. My experience is really difficult to put in words because it's so far from the norm and it's so far from any other female that I've met.
See a woman press slamming men.
And you beat the man.
I beat him silly. All of our characters are a little bit of ourselves. Chyna is a powerful, strong woman. She's attractive, and she holds her own in a male-dominated environment.
Chyna was called the ninth wonder of the world, the single most impressive human being since Andre the Giant. Her presence was frightening, but on the inside, she was nervous. At the beginning of her career, all the male wrestlers treated her like glassware. She felt the weight of the spotlight and the pressure to perform.
To be thrust into the limelight like that overnight, she went from being at home to being on the road immediately.
But in every segment, there was Triple H by her side, with a steady hand to guide her.
You know, the Greeks used to always say the perfect form, and they'd make these statues and stuff. I can always envision her body as one of those statues because it's like the perfect form.
Joanie and Hunter grew up in the same town, trained in the same wrestling school, and even now, they realized they were living only a few blocks away from each other.
I remember the first time they came to my house as a couple. They were so happy together.
He liked Chyna's competitive spirit and that she could match him and his best friend Shawn Michaels, not only in terms of confidence, but also in the gym.
I've never met somebody that can train as focused or hard as Chyna does. I just saw her as a person, and to be quite honest, I'm impressed.
They worked out together every day, pushing themselves to the absolute limit.
I'd be on the recumbent cycle, and I would just watch them do each other's elbows and chalk up and
She's a real powerhouse. I mean, you know, just her strength in the gym, her endurance in the gym. I mean, we train with Chyna on leg day or arm day. I mean, it doesn't matter. She'll kick our butt.
I hope you're ready to sweat, because I'm going to make you.
In their stable DX, Hunter and Shawn did a lot of silly segments. Meanwhile, Chyna was staring at the camera, unimpressed. But behind the scenes, Chyna loved to join in on the fun. She got along with everyone in DX.
One of the things that a lot of fans don't realize is the camaraderie that is inside a wrestling company like the WWE. She found some relationships in DX that she hadn't had.
Joanie Laura grew up in a broken home. The only constant in her life was her big sister, Kathy.
Whenever Joanie would talk about her life before she found pro wrestling, it was always one person, and that was Guthy. Guthy was very motherly in a lot of ways, looking after her and being a protector.
When her mother was angry, it was always Guthy who stood up for her little sister. But the real problem was their father, who was a heavy drinker.
I remember a time that he chased my mom around with a butcher knife.
Joni's brother left home as soon as he could. Then her sister Guthy went to college. All they wanted was to get away, leaving Joni behind, alone with her mother.
And I think Joni, unfortunately, was sort of abandoned by Sonny and I, and she was stuck there.
It wasn't until she came to WWE that Joni found stability in her social circle.
Joni finally had found a family. Now she's got a couple of dozen brothers that would take a bullet for her.
But the same people that propped her up now would later abandon her, leaving her in a state she could never fully recover from.
When I started wrestling, and every day I loved life. Every day, it was amazing.
I think the acceptance that Joni found in the WWE dressing rooms meant a lot to her. Sound like a cliche, but in this case it was true. Joni was one of the boys.
Backstage, Joni made friends with Mick Foley and took care of his daughter Noelle while he was out in the ring.
For a period of time, my daughter Noelle, who was 4 at the time, considered Joni to be her very best friend. And it was just adorable.
So I would be backstage a lot, and my dad would go off and do his thing. So Joni was always the one that would take care of me, hang out with me. She would do my hair and my nails and just hang out like two best friends.
At this point, Foley described Chyna as a positive influence and a great role model for his daughter, Noelle.
To me, I'm just as feminine as any other woman. I just happen to be a very feminine woman with an incredibly fit, muscular body.
In talk shows and interviews, Joni spoke like a true feminist.
The look is strength, and I think to me, what demonstrates
strength is a male word.
Strength is a male word because I think that women are afraid to show strength because they get chastised for it.
But Joni was not afraid to show strength.
The glass you hear break when Austin's music hit, that was the ceiling that Chyna busted through.
Wrestling guys and then wrestling her was really no difference. She just hit a lot harder than guys.
What do you know? The opportunity to talk. You never thought that a woman could be on an even playing field, did ya? Well, it was always even for me, JR.
In 1999, Chyna became the first woman to enter the Royal Rumble, and she even eliminated the biggest man in the match, Mark Henry.
First name is up, last name is yours.
A few months later, she competed in the King of the Ring tournament, which was also reserved for male wrestlers.
She could have beat me all day long, and people wouldn't have batted an eye because that's how believable she was.
I mean, she got to the point where she was a believable contender for a title.
But not everyone felt that way. In the summer of 1999, Chyna was set to face Steve Austin for his World Championship. She had earned a #1 contender spot, granting her a title match at SummerSlam.
Austin, at SummerSlam, I am gonna rip him off and stomp on him if I have to.
But Steve Austin, a top star in the company, refused to get in the ring with Chyna. No matter how strong she looked, Austin felt uncomfortable with the idea of hitting a woman on television. In fact, most wrestlers refused to work with Chyna because she was a woman.
I taught my children at a young age you respect women and that you don't lay your hands on them.
Chris Jericho found himself in a difficult position because he agreed to wrestle Chyna.
I got in big trouble from working with her. Vince was like, don't treat her like a woman, treat her like a wrestler. And I remember one time she got a little bit of a black eye from me, and you would have thought I cut her arm off with a chainsaw. Like, I got in so much trouble, and I was like, fuck, like I didn't do it on purpose.
Triple H's protective instinct didn't help the situation at all. Many wrestlers walked on eggshells around Chyna because they thought if they did something wrong, she would tell her boyfriend about it, and they were in trouble.
complaining about getting beat up by a woman?
Chyna's biggest achievement came in October 1999 when she beat Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental Championship. In January 2000, she won the title a second time. In August of the same year, a third time. But here she met an invisible barrier she could not break through. It was getting more and more obvious to Vince McMahon that there was no future for her in the men's division. Chyna was also experiencing some ups and downs in her relationship with Triple H. He was involved in an on-screen relationship with Stephanie McMahon, who up until this point had been an avid supporter of Chyna because of her strong personality and competitive mindset. But the storyline was getting realer by the second, as Triple H and Stephanie actually fell in love with each other. Chyna was suspicious, but she didn't want to be seen as overbearing and clingy. She had faith in Hunter. However, all this uncertainty left her in a vulnerable position.
I just worry sometimes that I dedicate everything to this job and that maybe, 10 years from now, I'm not doing this anymore and I will have not, gotten married or had kids or done things that normal people do. This is a very short-lived business, and I just sometimes think, that day is going to come for me when I'm going to plan on being here, but, suddenly I'll be gone and I'll think, now look what I did.
Growing up, Joni idolized women who were different. She always wanted to do something to break the mold. In hindsight, it's ironic. She wanted to be an FBI agent, but ended up working as a 900 number chat line worker and as a cocktail waitress in a strip club. Here, she met a stripper called Chyna. Joni loved the name because of its bold, edgy sound and would later build a groundbreaking career on the ideals of strength and independence that she developed during this period of her life. She spent a lot of her time in the gym, pushing her own boundaries to see what she was capable of. Everywhere she went, people stopped and stared because she was so muscular. Some people thought she was a lesbian because girls just weren't supposed to look that way.
People in the gym didn't know what they were looking at. They were doing double takes. Where did this girl come from?
Joni lived with her sister at the time. They were very close. One time, they went to a wrestling show together.
And she said, you and I are going to dress up and we're just going to go and we're going to see what people say about us.
And people were turning away from the ring and pointing at these girls in the stands because their biceps were showing. They looked jacked up.
Joni had many talents. She spoke German, French, and Spanish fluently. She played piano and cello. She might have been a teacher or a concert artist, but she chose to be a wrestler and started training at 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗚𝗏𝗧 School of Pro Wrestling.
I feel that it's time for a new breed of female pro wrestlers. And he said, okay, I think you're legit. I think you really want to do this. He said, but I want you to know, I'm not going to give you any preferential treatment.
Joni wouldn't have it any other way. She wanted to be treated like a wrestler. She worked just as hard as the guys, and she hit just as hard.
She used to come home with all sorts of bruises, black and blue everywhere. I can manhandle any guy in here.
Chyna looked television ready. She was a star without a platform. Until she met Triple H.
Sean and I see the size of her and we're like, holy.
Triple H was immediately impressed with Joni's unique look, her drive, and the way she handled herself, both in and out of the ring. He and Shawn Michaels pushed for her to get hired in a groundbreaking role, a female bodyguard. But Vince McMahon didn't think anyone would be afraid of a woman. Eric Bischoff, who was leading the rival promotion WCW, however, saw Joni's potential and made her a contract offer to bring her in, reportedly as the newest member of the NWO. This, along with the advocacy of Triple H and Shawn Michaels, was enough to change Vince's mind. Within 3 years, Chyna reached the pinnacle of her career. She broke down barriers, made history, and became one of the most famous women on the planet.
I think she's the bomb. She is just everything that a woman should be. Chyna's got the coolest butt, the best butt all women should have.
She's hot, yeah.
She's gorgeous.
In November 2000, Chyna was the cover girl for Playboy magazine. WWE promoted it. Her sister Guthy was very proud.
I was so proud of her because I thought she was just stunningly beautiful.
Joni was often teased for her physique. People said she was ugly, that she looked like a man.
You know, she also had a ton of insecurities and probably a negative self-image at times because of some of the criticism that she would take.
Joni had undergone plastic surgery in preparation for her singles push. This, combined with her star power and confidence, effectively made her one of the sexiest women in the world.
It's just one other example of so many of the things that I've been able to do.
Chyna's mailbox overflowed with career opportunities, talk show invitations, red carpet events, acting roles in Hollywood. But being under contract with WWE, she wasn't allowed to take advantage of all those opportunities. Instead, her Playboy appearance was woven into a storyline with the conservative heel group Right to Censor, and Chyna was demoted to the women's division, which triggered a shift in her character, her real character that people don't like to talk about. Her personal life was also going downhill. She found a note from Stephanie confessing her love for Triple H tucked away in one of his suitcases.
And I found a love letter from Stephanie that had dated a year back. So the whole time they were doing the storyline, basically they were together.
When she found out her boyfriend had been cheating on her for over a year, Chyna was devastated. Being Chyna, the strong woman, she tried to go on like nothing happened. She went to the gym like she always did. There, she found her friend, Mick Foley.
I remember being on either the bike or the Stairmaster, and she got on the apparatus next to me. We started talking, and she broke down in tears.
She and Triple H had been separated, but Chyna still believed they could work things out. She never expected to be replaced this quickly. Her initial sadness then turned to anger. The next time she saw Stephanie backstage, she confronted her and backed her into a corner. Chyna threatened her, saying, "You better call your dad in here, because I'm going to choke you out." Her emotions had gotten the better of her, but after rumors spread backstage, she tried not to cause any more drama and instead focused on saving her career. With her ex-boyfriend now dating the boss's daughter, Chyna's future in the company was anything but certain. The end of her contract was coming up, and it was time to renegotiate. She was offered $400,000 a year, guaranteed, but she refused to sign for a salary of less than $1 million a year.
She wanted equal pay to the guys. She was one of the main faces of the company that she busted her ass to become.
Listen, you ungrateful bitch! If it wasn't for me, you'd be nothing! You got that? I made you, you know well, I can break you!
Her deal to me was, Chyna is as valuable to WWE as Stone Cold Steve Austin is.
But Chyna wasn't as valuable to WWE as Steve Austin was, because of the simple fact that she was a woman. Even if she could match the male stars in athleticism and star power, there was one big problem. Violence against women is a social taboo. Many people felt uncomfortable watching intergender matches. Sponsors and partners of the WWF were worried that their association with this type of content could erode sales figures. The only alternative was to have her wrestle women. But then, she would be nowhere near profitable enough to justify the salary she demanded. And Chyna didn't want to wrestle women. In her mind, she was destined for something bigger.
I think that was it. She's so full of everything that you want to be around, to somebody that just, I would, in a sense, completely goes dark.
Chyna didn't want to be a diva. Even though she was positioned at the very top of the division and won the women's championship with ease, she thought less of the divas division than anyone else. She thought it was a joke. She thought she was too big of a star to work 3-minute matches that served no purpose other than to let the fans know it was time for a bathroom break.
But as much as I respect all of the women in the World Wrestling Federation, and I do, I felt as of late that I really don't have a whole lot of competition. So instead of pinning my fellow divas, from now on, I'm just gonna have to spank them.
Chyna was beginning to behave disrespectfully towards the sport. She refused to lose to other women because for her own character, it was a step backwards.
How was I going to step backwards and wrestle women that didn't have the experience from the guys that I was wrestling every day?
Her reputation as a trailblazer, which was reinforced through booking decisions by the company, generated so much sympathy and support from fans that it almost covered up the fact that Chyna was notoriously difficult to work with during this time. She was trying to find her place in the company while simultaneously navigating the emotionally difficult situation between her, Triple H, and Stephanie and Vince McMahon. She then refused to lose her women's championship to Lita when her contract ran out. This was seen as highly unprofessional by many in the industry because it went against the old tradition that if you want to leave, you lose on your way out. Chyna was released on November 30th, 2001. Her journey, from now on until her death, will get progressively darker and more uncomfortable. We will do our best to understand her motivations and explain her decisions. In 2002, Joanie Laurer appeared in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
This was a huge deal. Her walking down that ramp, in that beautiful outfit, it was like nothing that I've seen before, especially in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Again, she found herself in the ring with men. This time, she would find out if she could really keep up with the guys. Chyna described the Japanese style of wrestling as a physical chess game. She received MMA training from Antonio Inoki and spent 10 hours a day training to adapt to this new type of competition.
団体の考え方って、それを転換しなきゃいけない部分。
She was extremely confident going into her big fight against Masahiro Chono.
October 14th at the Tokyo Dome. Fight me like a man.
Joanie impressed everyone with her toughness. And even though she lost, she was the star of the show.
It was the most physically demanding achievement I've ever done in my life.
The same challenges Joanie faced in WWE followed her to New Japan. Many wrestlers didn't want to participate in intergender matches. The company didn't even have a women's division. However, that was not the reason why her run in Japan ended after only a couple of months. Chyna had started seeing X-Pac or Sean Waltman, a former member of Chyna's stable DX. However, both of them were struggling with drug addiction. They found solace in each other and even got engaged, wishing for a better life together.
I was in heaven, man. I just thought, okay, fine, happiness. And I think she felt that too.
But their relationship was highly dysfunctional. Chyna got fired from New Japan because she was late to scheduled meetings, or didn't show up at all. Punctuality is deeply ingrained in Japanese culture, and other wrestlers saw Joanie's unreliability as a lack of respect for their time. Back in America, Joanie was looking to establish herself in other avenues outside of wrestling. But after leaving the spotlight of her WWE career, she found it difficult to find work in the show business. WWE had secured the rights to the name Chyna, so she had to use her real name, Joanie Laurer, effectively cutting her off from her reputation and star power. But it wasn't just her career. Joanie was struggling more and more with her mental health. She frequently embarrassed herself, drunk or high on drugs.
I started hearing stories about her partying and being seen in public places, like not in control of herself. And it was just really, really jarring. And I didn't know that person.
Joanie found a way to express herself through music and joined a band as a drummer and singer.
And was looking for a way to express myself and move forward. And can't take music or expression away from you. And when you have everything that's taken from you,
That's how she felt, like she had everything taken away from her. Her boyfriend, her career, and even her name. Joni really identified with the name Chyna, not only because it reminded her of the strong, groundbreaking athlete she used to be, but because it was a time when she had a family.
I do feel like there was a sense of abandonment that Joni felt because we did not keep in touch. We, the WWE community, did not keep in touch.
She went from having that family at the WWE to really being on her own.
When Joni refused to lose the Women's Championship in her match against Lita, many wrestlers that she once considered friends became distant.
I think she really felt alone.
Joni was no stranger to the feeling of being abandoned by those she loved and trusted. But as the cycle kept repeating itself, something changed within her. She developed a psychological shielding mechanism that would forever keep her isolated. This all came to a head in 2005. But until then, it was 2 years of purgatory.
I don't think you appreciate how miserable I can make your life.
stop. You're turning me on.
During her relationship with Sean Waltman, Joni kept appearing sporadically in music videos and other small projects. Then, in 2004, Red Light District released a video that shocked everyone, including Chyna herself. One Night in Chyna. It was tough for everyone who knew her, especially her sister.
My initial reaction was horror. Secondly, I thought that's not the real Joni, that's drugs.
Sean and Joni reportedly needed money to finance their drug habits and took drastic measures to fill their bank accounts. However, Joni claimed that she never gave her permission for the to be released. It shocked her when she found out about it. She blamed Waltman for selling their without her permission. She even went so far as to say he and exploited her during their time together. Whether there's any truth to these claims is unclear, but she certainly felt and exploited. She had lost control of her life. Chyna described the release of the as something that happened to her. It deeply affected her mental health and how she viewed herself. Still, she stayed together with Sean. The reason? A deep loneliness. Sean could relate.
She was a very comforting and felt like a safe place for me. There's that hurt, right? I'm hurting. I'm hurting, and she makes me feel better. And she's the only thing that, besides like the drugs.
They both had an imbalance in their life, and they tried to fill the void with the empty dopamine they got from pills and alcohol. On New Year's Day 2005, Chyna was arrested after assaulting her boyfriend. She punched and kicked him in front of his children. Waltman filed a case against her, and he called her sister Kathy.
The drug use sort of escalated. I knew there was a problem. I showed up at her door. She had no idea it was coming. Classic intervention. Joni, I think you got a problem. I really, really love you. Please do this for me. Will you consider going to rehab?
Reluctantly, Joni agreed, but only out of love for her sister, perhaps in a moment of confusion. They took a private plane to the facility, but when the doctors walked her through the program and asked her to sign the waiver to get her admitted, Joni refused. She got hostile, even toward her sister.
And that was the end of our relationship. From then on, Joni wasn't really speaking to me anymore because she was so angry at me for trying to do this.
She later sent Kathy a voicemail. "I can't believe you deserted me." For some reason, Joni read Kathy's attempts to help her as attempts to harm her. It wasn't the first time she lost someone close after visiting a rehab clinic.
Well, months before her 16th birthday, her personality really changed.
Her grades are plummeting. I was told that she was hanging around with a bad crowd.
When Joni was 16 years old, her mother found what she thought was marijuana in Joni's room. She then dragged her daughter to a drug rehabilitation center. Inside the rehab center, they asked Joni to pee in a cup, and her mother accompanied her to the bathroom.
They wanted to take a sample of her urine, so they sent me into the bathroom with her, and she went in the cup and threw it at me. Just threw it at me. It was very defiant.
It was the last of their many fights. Her mother kicked her out of the house. She never saw Chyna again.
Give me a break. I mean, what kid doesn't smoke pot, right? I just don't like the way that whole thing was handled.
In 𝗏𝗧, Joni lost not only her sister, but also her best friend. She was the only one who supported her when her mother abandoned her, when Hunter abandoned her, when wrestling abandoned her. In 2005, Joni appeared on the reality TV show The Surreal Life, where she openly discussed her pain over her wrestling career ending, her failed relationship with Waltman, and her desire to be seen as more than a wrestler and more than a sex symbol. She sought acceptance and understanding from her housemates, wanted to heal and recover.
I think Chyna was longing for genuine friendships, and she had trouble finding them. You know, I think most of the people that she was hanging around were associated themselves with her because she was famous.
Ironically, all Joni really wanted was to go back to the time when she was a wrestler, when she had a stable relationship and a support network of good friends. She wanted to go back to being Chyna. In 2007, she changed her legal name to Chyna, not only because it allowed her to use the name commercially, but also because she identified with the character she played.
Chyna is a powerful, strong woman. She's attractive, and she holds her own in a male-dominated environment.
What many don't know is that when DX was drifting apart and Vince McMahon had the idea to put Chyna in singles matches against men, she didn't want to do it.
They wanted me to wrestle by myself. I didn't want to do it. I was always under an enormous amount of pressure to be perfect.
Chyna's wrestling career was a series of challenges.
It's almost like everybody would set me up to fail, but then when I didn't, they'd be surprised.
Every time, she convinced backstage officials that she was ready for the next step. And with each success, her ego got a little bigger. When she was eventually fired from WWE, she felt extremely disrespected. Vince McMahon sent her a fax informing her that she was no longer needed by the company. After years of being a major star for WWE, this impersonal and abrupt dismissal came as a surprise to Joni, but there was a reason. She had behaved unprofessionally and disrespected wrestling tradition, so Vince fired her in a disrespectful way. For years, Joni tried to make it on her own outside WWE. She thought she was worth more than Vince McMahon was willing to pay her. She thought she was a star. But without the support she had enjoyed during her wrestling career, she failed. And she didn't want to admit that to herself. She began to look back on her wrestling career with sadness and regret, her proudest achievements now stark reminders of her most recent failures. Chyna used to pride herself on her statuesque physique, but she stopped lifting weights because it reminded her of a very stressful period in her life. Her coping mechanisms changed, she said, and she struggled to find healthy outlets for her pain. In 2008, she appeared on season 1 of Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew.
Hello.
She wanted to deal with her past and clear the path to a better future.
Well, I pretty much consider myself growing up alone. I have definitely masked the pain with some alcohol. Most of my life was lived as a horror movie.
As a child, her mother sometimes locked her in the basement as punishment. When she was 13, she was by a teacher. He made her stay after class and forced his mouth onto hers. It was Joni's first kiss. She then struggled with bulimia and body dysmorphia, not to mention her self-esteem and trust issues. Studying Spanish literature at the University of Tampa, she says she was by 2 men. And as if that weren't enough, her father took out student loans in her name, leaving her in debt without her even knowing. Without a doubt, Joni felt alone in the world. Every person she ever trusted ended up hurting her, so she kept her distance, didn't let anyone close. It was hard for her to form meaningful relationships with new people because of her past trauma.
If things don't start happening now here, I think there's going to be issues, problems. There's got to be a change.
Unfortunately, rehab didn't help her. On her 39th birthday, she tried to take her own life.
But I'm really very much a girly girl, even though it's confusing because I'm such a strong athlete.
In 2009, Chyna returned to the adult film industry. This time, it was a conscious decision. She wanted to project strength and independence and take charge of her narrative again.
What's wrong with it if I do it in a sexy, safe environment where I have control and they're going to make me feel beautiful? And, maybe mentally, couldn't go any worse.
She was grasping for straws to get money, to get publicity. I don't know if Joni ever outran the shame of it.
Ultimately, Joni did not find happiness or validation from this path.
I don't think there's anybody that is really proud of that. I think you do that out of necessity. You look around and say, well, where else am I going to make this kind of money?
I want people to look at me and think that I'm beautiful and that I have a nice body and that I'm nice to look at, but I never wanted that to be my sole purpose. I think that women as a whole could do so much better than that, and it really annoys me when that's the only worth that's given to them.
Joni probably hated herself for what she had become. She even said she felt like a monster at one point, like she was living in hell. But it seemed like there was no way out for her. She wanted to be remembered for her strength and trailblazing spirit, but felt forced in other directions when that recognition was denied. Jim Ross says she had an overwhelming desire to be inducted into the Hall of Fame during her lifetime. But after all the scandals, the wrestling world had distanced itself from Chyna. Even former friends from WWE now felt uncomfortable when her name came up in conversation. Her giant footprint in the industry had been largely erased. The way WWE handled her legacy after her departure almost made Joni herself doubt the great things she had achieved. In 2011, she appeared for a one-off match in TNA. She enjoyed the opportunity to work with Vince Russo and Mick Foley, two of her oldest friends. Her body wasn't what it used to be. She struggled to execute moves safely. Still, TNA wanted to keep working with her. But then they found out Chyna had another adult film about to be released. When she had to choose between wrestling and Chyna chose the latter. In 2012, a friend found her in an empty apartment that reeked of whiskey, sleeping on an air mattress, her only piece of furniture. This was her life now. Joni knew she needed to make a change, so she traveled to Japan and became an English teacher. Joni loved Japan. She had a schedule to keep, a job where she helped people. It gave her some measure of stability.
She was looking for who she was again, as a person who just wants to have peaceful, normal life.
She did yoga and switched from a vegetarian to a vegan diet, joined the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, got baptized, and hoped to put some of the bad decisions of her past behind her. Most importantly, she tried to forgive herself and see herself the way God must see her. But the world did not forgive her. People were still talking about her dark past. She went from being ostracized in one country to feeling isolated in another. On her YouTube channel, she documented her ups and downs, her inner struggles. Her sobriety was an ongoing battle. Mostly, a losing one. Eventually, things got so bad that she tried to kill herself again. She attacked a policeman, hoping he would draw his weapon and shoot her. But Japanese policemen are trained in martial arts and only use lethal force when absolutely necessary. A group of officers restrained and arrested her, and she lost her job because of the incident. Directionless, stranded in a foreign country, Joni decided to call her mother for the first time in 30 years.
I couldn't believe it was her. She said, "It's not like I can get a job at McDonald's." I said, "Sure you can. You can get a job at McDonald's, flipping burgers until you can find something else."
Joni's mother tried to show her an alternative to the life that was awaiting her in California. Right around the same time, Joni was approached by Anthony Anzaldo, an agent that had represented her in the early 2000s. He wanted to make a documentary about her.
We want to make sure that you are provided with the lifestyle and the people that you're surrounded with that is only going to bring you joy and happiness from now until the day you die.
That sounded like everything she ever wanted. It sounded like these people really wanted to help her.
My job when Chyna came back was to help her spiritually, to introduce her to this way of thinking. I'm happy. Happier than I was yesterday, not quite as happy as I'm going to be tomorrow. It's a lifestyle.
But Chyna didn't need a spiritual leader. She needed a therapist. At the Long Island Comic-Con, she ran into an old friend, Mick Foley.
She wrapped her arms around me. It was like I'd rediscovered a great friend.
I'm about 35 minutes away from there if you want to come over and have dinner with the Foleys.
Mick invited her to have dinner with his family that night to reconnect with his daughter Noelle.
My dad called and he said, "Yeah, Joni's coming over." And I'm like, "What? Like, she is?"
The last time they saw each other, Joni was a superstar, and Noelle her biggest fan. But a lot has changed since then. When they were talking, Mick noticed hundreds of small scars on Joni's arms.
So she had been self-harming, and it looked like she'd been doing that for a long time. To be in control of a physical pain, which somehow soothes the uncontrollable emotional pain. You have to remember, Joni was fragile. As powerful as she was dealt a bad hand, and the right people were not there for her in the right place at the right time.
I think it's a matter of managing what I'm doing and having support.
Anthony and his team had only 1 year to film the reconstruction of Chyna. They wanted her to get clean, reconnect with her family, and as a grand finale, get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But these things don't happen overnight. For years, Chyna had been fighting to be recognized by a company that treated her like she never existed. Still, Anthony dragged her to the WWE headquarters. They stood at the front desk with no appointment, demanding a meeting with the executives.
We're going to ask for Hunter. We're going to ask for Vince.
I thought the idea of her showing up at WWE headquarters was foolish. I just thought
we were not greeted favorably.
Chyna had pinned all her hopes on the documentary crew, but she quickly realized they weren't helping her.
I wish she had not agreed to have her journey documented.
How are you feeling today?
I feel pretty tired, but I'm hanging in there.
She's going to face her demons. She's going to be put in some very uncomfortable situations.
They took her to her father's grave, where she broke down in tears. They wanted to film a reunion with her mother. They were putting too much pressure on her fragile psyche.
People have this grave lack of understanding about trying to heal the past. This is a low priority. The here and now is what counts. And we have a deadly illness, we got to treat that. And then we have to build the capacity to regulate emotions.
In early 2016, Chyna was running low on prescription medication that she had obtained in Japan. So she and Anthony reached out to Dr. Drew, the addiction specialist that had tried to treat Chyna on celebrity rehab years earlier. They wanted to order the drugs from abroad.
This is a totally crazy combination.
Yeah.
And dangerous and crazy.
Okay.
That's why I need you to get as soon as possible.
Yes.
And then isn't there some oxycodone in there too?
Opiate addiction is fatal. It's deadly, deadly, deadly. And my recollection is she was on the benzo opiate combo that was killing so many people. And you got to get taken care of when you're on that.
Dr. Drew advised Chyna to go to rehab as soon as possible, but Anthony had other plans and pushed ahead with the schedule.
Everybody wants a piece of you, and everybody wanted a piece of Joni. I think she trusted a lot. I think it came back to hurt her quite a bit.
At one point, Anthony took her to Las Vegas to participate in a poker tournament. Here she realized just how incompetent the documentary team was. 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗚𝗥, the director, was addicted to heroin and wanted to get high with her.
I wanted to do drugs with her so badly. I wanted to bond with her, you know? Like, I knew she was doing the same things I was doing, and I felt like I understood her.
They were not helping her. They were making her worse.
You know, but at the end of the day, it's about just being happy all the time. Period.
She said Anthony was making her do things she doesn't want to do. She said that to me.
Joni relapsed into drinking alcohol and abusing prescription medication, which she shared with the director, 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗚𝗥. One day, Anthony found her high in her apartment, and he told her if she doesn't stop taking drugs, she's going to die.
She stood up, she picked me up, and she held me like this. How dare you say that to me? You're fired. And I started laughing at her. What are you talking about, fired? I'm not your manager. I'm your soulmate. And she says, I want you out of my life, and I want you out of my life now.
What Anthony never understood is that Joni didn't want to do the documentary. She did it because there was no other option.
And it's not just Eric, and it's not just Anthony, and it's not just the WWE, and it's not just her, but it's everything.
Her last days were captured on film.
I need some help. Can you help me?
In her last interview, 𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗚𝗥 was high on heroin, asking questions but not really listening to her response.
I don't know, is this shit interesting to anybody?
It is.
Why?
There's something really important and
You
big
didn't even
happening.
know me.
If you could go back and change something, what would you do?
We'll never do it again.
Never do what, though? Anything?
Never wrestling. I would have been a concert musician or a ballerina. Professional alcoholic. And I'm just kidding, man. I'm just pushing buttons right now.
In 1999, at the height of her career, Chyna worried that she would never get married, never have children, and never lead a normal life. She left the wrestling business with a broken heart and a chip on her shoulder, with the will to prove to herself and to everyone else that she was a star. But the pursuit of fame did not bring her happiness, only isolation. For years, she had been a symbol of strength. Showing her vulnerability would have been the same as admitting defeat.
Why is everyone always trying to take me on? There's a person inside of me. It's been a long 10 years, 15 years. I'm tired. I'm Chyna. I'm a champion. My brother and my mom and then Anthony started getting involved and everything, and I'm like, is there one person that could support me? Did I do something that bad with my life?
Chyna wanted to go to rehab and fight her way out of her addiction. But Anthony told her to wait. He was negotiating a deal with the reality show Intervention to exploit her even further.
He cared about the movie. He cared about how he was going to look like the provider in the movie. Just didn't quite plan on how he was actually going to fix her. And I don't think he really cared too much.
Chyna didn't want cameras pointing at her anymore. She knew she had to go to rehab now and told a member of the production team not to tell Anthony. One last time, she tried to do it on her own. One last time, she opened the pill bottle. One last time, she fell asleep.
Chyna? Chyna?
Chyna was found dead here at her apartment in Redondo Beach, California. A friend told cops that Chyna hadn't answered her phone in days and came to check on her.
The news came in, and I burst into tears. If I had the chance to talk to her again, I would have reiterated that I loved her and I was there for her, but more importantly, I would have backed it up with my actions. There always seemed to be a tomorrow, until there wasn't.
Chyna's death was headline news for 12 hours. Then, Prince died, and everybody seemed to have already forgotten about her.
I think when she died, and this is the saddest part to me, I don't think she had any idea of the impact she had on millions of women across the globe. A lot of it had to do with the company where you achieved all that, literally convincing you over the years that you are nothing.
I want to be a success out of the wrestling. I'm going to be one of those success stories.
What? I'm going to be a success story. You are a success story. There was one Chyna, one.
All she wanted was to be re-embraced by the only family that made sense to her, which was the WWE. That's all she wanted.
Hunter and Vince, may I please have a meeting so we can make amends and bury the hatchet?
But time and again, Chyna ruined her own chances.
I remember when Howard Stern asked me if we did it in the butt, and I said yes, and Hunter calling me and being so freaking mad at me.
There are rules that come with getting inducted into the Hall of Fame.
At the time, Triple H had 3 young daughters, all under the age of 10. He was afraid that if Chyna was inducted into the Hall of Fame, they would find out about his involvement with her and her past in the adult entertainment industry. 1 week before she died, Chyna called the office of WWE, but no one picked up the phone. No one called her back. 2 months after her death, Anthony organized a memorial service.
The memorial service for Chyna was like nothing I've ever seen. It seemed like more of a production than a memorial service.
That's what we charge. Okay. It's $100 for the 2.
The same people who put her on this schedule saw fit to do a memorial that was like a circus where you could get a better seat if you paid more money. It's like, no, this is not the way you honor somebody. This is not the way you show your respect or admiration or love for somebody.
If ever there was a soul that deserved to rest in peace, it was Joni's. But even after her death, Chyna was being exploited. First, Anthony filmed her body when he found her dead. Then he organized a tribute show to win back the losses from the failed documentary project. But Anthony went one step further, adding insult to injury when he stole her ashes.
I gave him permission to have her cremated. And I said, take 3/4 of them, scatter them in the Pacific Ocean, and send 1/4 to me. But he didn't scatter them all. He only scattered half of them. He kept 1/4 of the ashes, which has just infuriated me.
Anthony and Joni's mother then went to court over the rights to Chyna's estate. Joni's mother won the case. Today, she controls the name Chyna. Like Kathy, she blames wrestling for Joni's downfall.
I see her so differently than her Chyna persona. To me, she's not Chyna. To me, she's Joni. I really miss her every single day. I miss her.
𝗖𝗥𝗘𝗗𝗚𝗏 is still struggling with guilt. He knows he was acting irresponsibly. He is telling himself that he let her die. 𝗖𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 also blamed himself for her death. He left her in a bad state when deep down he knew it would end this way. When he was inducted into the Hall of Fame as part of DX in 2019, he was sweating profusely, overcome with extreme emotion. How could he stand here knowing how much the same thing would have meant to her? One after another, the former DX members unfolded their notes and delivered their speeches. Then there was Triple H. As the years went on, he wondered if he made a mistake, how things might have gone if he had handled their situation differently. When Triple H was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2025, he talked about all the people that helped him over the years, people that would take a bullet for him, all the support that Chyna didn't have.
Everybody is a product of the people around them and what it leads them to do.
Then he talked about his daughter, Murphy. She plays in the boys' football team in high school.
She's a running back on that team, and when I asked her why she wanted to play football with boys in high school, she said, because I want to prove to myself that I can. It was as simple as that. Take on the world, Murphy. You can do it all.
Chyna did what no other woman did before her.
She forever changed this business.
The greatest woman wrestler of all time. This woman who stretched the language of what you can do in sports entertainment.
Chyna, the first woman to become the Intercontinental Champion.
I always wanted to break away a little bit.
I don't think she was a victim. I think she was a warrior.
According to Triple H, Chyna is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame at some point.
Her contributions to the business alone, you see it, I can see it in all these women.
She set the table for every woman that came after her. For me personally, she encouraged me, she believed in me, and she told me any dream I had, anything I wanted to do in the company, that I could do that.
I'm going to be the first, the biggest, the baddest, the new role model for female wrestlers. Got that?
The ninth wonder of the world, Chyna! Her legacy goes way beyond our industry. In some manner, I look at her during that time frame as like this paradigm shift of the thinking of how people saw women and women of power and what women can do with that power.
That there were people who were 8, 10 years old who have done things in their lives that may not have been possible without somebody like Joni breaking down barriers, showing what was out there, what could be.
There is not another Chyna. And there never will be.
I will be remembered forever